Hi, Sheerlie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful that we've gotten to connect.
Yes, I cannot wait to chat today. Let's just start with why ghee?
Yeah, so there's so many layers to this story, and I'll try and touch on all of them because I feel like they're all really important. But basically, I had just finished a year-long herbalism apprenticeship, and I was at Spirit Weavers, which is a women's Skillshare gathering, and I saw that there was a class called Herbal Ghee making, and I was just so lit up by this. I thought it was just the coolest, most brilliant idea because my herbalism training was really all about bringing the herbs into everything, like into the kitchen, into our cooking, into our elixirs, into our meditations, into our gardens, just really integrating the herbs into our lives. I took this class. I thought it was incredible. And started making herbal ghee. And for me, it's just like another beautiful way to kind of stack functions because I'm someone who deals with chronic health issues. And I feel like I could spend all of my time just doing the things that I need to do to kind of have baseline functionality. And so, yeah, like bring herbs into my cooking, especially through the ghee. That makes it even easier. And I cook my rice in bone broth, and I'll like do my oil pulling in the morning when I go on a little walk to try and get some gentle movement and balance my circadian rhythm. And I'll like wash on my face when I'm watching a movie, just like making these practices second nature, bringing them into our daily lives and making everything richer because of that. And then there's one other piece to this. So after I started Belly of the Sun, some friends started reaching out to me and telling me that there's like clarified butter traditions from their home countries. So in Yemen, a friend of mine was telling me how they clarify and smoke butter in order to preserve it and infuse it with fenugreek seeds. So it has the herbal component as well. And then a woman I know from Morocco told me the same thing about a food called smen, which is clarified and fermented butter that's also infused with herbs. And also they like use it in their coffee, like bulletproof coffee. And I just was blown away by this, first of all, because my dad always says there's nothing new under the sun. So we're just like always in this process of rediscovery and coming back to ancient traditions that have enriched our lives forever. And then also my mom is from Morocco, and she left when she was like a year old. And Moroccan food has been a big part of like our culture and our lives, but a lot of things have been lost because my family immigrated several times. And so it just really made sense why ghee and herbal ghee was calling to me so strongly, because as we're like preserving the butter, it's preserving a cultural tradition. And I know about ghee through Ayurveda and thanks to like Indian traditions, but I realized that this is actually like a global practice of preserving butter so that it could be shelf stable without refrigeration, So just human brilliance.
It's wonderful to hear those various angles because it reminds me of the name of your business, Belly of the Sun. Where I live, we're covered in feet of snow for like 6 months out of the year. So we really do need to capture the sun. We really do need to have access to, for me, cheeses, butter, ghee, etc., that can really like stand the test of winter and take all that rich, amazing goodness and hold over until we get grass again. And it makes the
Yes.
grass like so magical. when it comes. And to your point, like when you look back at indigenous traditions all over the world, like part of my heritage is Irish, St. Brigid's Day is February 1st, also known as Imbolc, and it's about the swelling of the ewes' tummies and when the milk first starts to come in. And so all the treats that are made to celebrate St. Brigid's Day are about milk, butter, cream, and yellow and orange flower petals. So I have some calendula drying right now, but I completely resonate with just how powerful it is to capture that energy and to celebrate it and to make it a ritual as much as possible. Is there also a chemical benefit to preserving these herbs in butter as opposed to like steaming them in water or making some kind of decoction?
Yes, there is. And I don't know if I would say it's necessarily better than any other method, but it's definitely has its own benefits. So, ghee is known for making the foods or herbs that it's paired with more bioavailable, which is why it's such a good carrier oil. Like it's carrying these nutrients deep into our cells because it actually can pass the lipid membranes of our cells. So we get those nutrients delivered deep. And that can be really important for like fat soluble nutrients, but also any nutrients that it's paired with. It will just drive them deeper into our bodies and make them more accessible for use. So it's a really, really incredible carrier oil.
Have you noticed, like when you started making these, I don't even want to call them food. They're so special. They're like little celebrations. And I mean, of course, they're food and I eat them, and my daughter eats them with a spoon. Like we had, I'm thinking of your cacao ghee, and she would take like whatever she was eating and just dip it in the jar, all disgusting. And it hard, like, I just watch her, like, it was just so primal, right? Like, she just would look at the jar and then need to have every part of her hand in it. But have you noticed that, like, your relationship with the herbs, taking them that way is different? Or, like, what made something appealing to be in the ghee?
There's definitely an element of pleasure in these creations and also ease, which we discussed, like just bringing it into things that we're already doing. So I love to blend the ghee in my coffee and make like a bulletproof coffee, like we were saying they do in Morocco for who knows how many hundreds of years. Um, and so having herbs in there too, like, for example, today I put kava ghee in my coffee to help balance. Like, the fat helps balance the caffeine so I wouldn't be like super jittery in this interview, but also to bring some calm flow. And it just so easy. I just take a scoop, put it in the blender, blend it with my coffee. It makes it a super special treat and also just really delicious, really pleasurable. I feel like there is a really primal need for fat,
Mm,
you know?
mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me more about that.
So there's this functional nutritionist named Alyssa. She's restorative wellness on Instagram. And she said that fat signals abundance and safety to our bodies. And that just really resonates. I think it really shows that primal connection to fats and how we've evolved with fats. And they have, there are foods that we can like subsist on for a period of time until we'll start feeling undernourished. And then there are foods that are rich and satiate us really deeply and also put away like some reserves for the future to help us be resilient. And I feel like that's really what fat does for us on a primal level. It makes us feel like we're taken care of, like we have what we need.
Mm.
And it really is so essential to so many of our bodily processes, you know?
Yeah, you have these amazing hats. I'm lucky enough to own one. And they say fat and fertile on them. And the minute I saw someone wearing the hat, I forget who it was, but I was like, I must have this hat because we want to, I think, demonize fat. So even though for years there have been people saying like we've gone too far with fat, there are good fats, there are bad fats, there are these fats, there are those fats. But I just think the like, forgive the term, but trauma of the low fat culture in the West has been so severe that even though people will know that on the one hand, I also see behavior that is like contradictory on the other hand, that's coming from a place of, oh, I want to believe that this is a healthy fat, but I'm also kind of tepid. Or people who are just not really used to eating things with a lot of fat. So maybe it's not even like palatable. And when I saw this hat, Fat and Fertile, it was so playful and fun. And I love wearing mine because, yes, you have to have that safety and that prosperity and that extra oomph in your body in order to have this kind of like not only physical fertility but like creative fertility and resilience and like there I think there's just layers to it.
Definitely. I love that. Yes, there are so many layers to fertility, and fertility is so important, right? As like a vital sign in Chinese medicine, it's considered a vital sign because it shows that our bodies are healthy enough to create new life.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you referenced having chronic health problems. I have chronic like autoimmune stuff, etc. Haven't had a flare in ages because of these various food and lifestyle, farming and connecting with the earth and eating lots of fats and taking lots of care to make sure that the fats that I'm eating are good fats. We'll get to that in a second. But I also feel like there's this reality that even for people who don't want to be mothers or parents, they also need to focus on their fertility. Like, can you talk a little bit more about some downstream impacts of being undernourished and like not having that abundance and prosperity in your body and around you? Like, are you seeing customers that are depleted, that are looking for some of your herbal blends and your amazing ghee to kind of revive some of this dormancy?
I think so. And I think a lot of us are depleted in one way or another just from like the modern lifestyles that we lead that are so like productivity oriented, you know, we don't rest enough. Just even just resting enough is something restorative that can help us mitigate depletion um, from diet or other factors. Like our soil is depleted. It's very easy to be depleted right now. But yeah, I just think like in Chinese medicine, dairy is considered yin, and it's really building to like all of the vital substances in our bodies. It's really good for people who are depleted. So it builds yin, it builds qi, it builds blood, it builds jing, which is like our constitutional essence that governs our development and also like our reproductive health. And I just think about that also, like yin, we need to cultivate our yin. It's like burnout prevention. Yang is our activity. It's like the sun. It's our production, our creativity, even. So, yeah, I just think of that balance in terms of like how most of us need to kind of operate in these modern times. Um, but then also like on very practical level, our hormones depend on fat for, you know, for hormone production and for hormone balance. Our nervous systems depend on fat. Our brains and cognitive function depends on fat. Our blood sugar regulation depends on fat. Like so many bodily systems require fat. And that's why I feel like we evolved with fats. They really, really are essential to our health and vitality.
Yes, it's making so much sense. And parts in my life where I haven't been focusing on my own fertility because, as you know, not wanting to be pregnant or reducing fertility to simply that, the ability to get pregnant, which of course it is, but also the other side of that is like being stressed out or having a lot of anxiety or poor sleep or mood swings or low libido or whatever it is. And it all comes back to this kind, like you were saying, the cognitive function, the hormonal balancing, the blood sugar balancing. And we just can't, I don't think, I mean, I'm just an idiot with a microphone, but we
No.
can't just short circuit this whole world of richness and, like you said earlier, pleasure. And especially I love what the whole concept of your business of also bringing in these herbs to make these like magical bites of. Don't you have like a blend with skullcap? I mean, I feel like I can almost taste it, like this magical bite of replenishment and relaxation and just like grounding. And you could smear it on some toast or a date or just by itself on a spoon, your coffee, what have you. Yeah, I just feel like it's something for everyone. It's not just about being at a point in your life where you're wanting to create something new. It's also about getting away from some of these chronic issues that we've just like normalized.
Totally. I love that. And I really love that you like appreciate the playfulness, but also the depth of this fat and fertile, because it actually started with my partner handing me a plate of like steak and potatoes one day and saying, "Eat up. I need you fat and fertile." And I just loved it so much. And I just want to share that energy with people of like, yes, we need to be nourished. We need to be nourished. The goal is we can have goals around how we look or, but the first most important goal is to be and feel nourished. And from there, so much of the beauty and gifts of life can flow, whether it's creative fertility or another kind of all kinds of fertility. Just the gifts of life can flow when we feel nourished, safe, and abundant.
So how are you finding these herbs? Or are these herbs that you were working with before you started Belly of the Sun? Or is it like, talk to me a little bit about how you're making these blends and how it's all coming together for you and what that's like.
I mentioned my herbalism apprenticeship, which was, it was a folk herbalism. So a lot of like kitchen herbalism, and it was also plant spirit medicine. So the way that we actually first were introduced to an herb before we started studying its properties was by doing like a blind plant spirit meditation where we would not know what plant we were drinking and drink an infusion of a single plant. And then our teacher would guide us through a little guided meditation. And then we would all share what came up for us, what we learned, what we saw. And then she would tell us about the plant. And this was like I think it's the most incredible foundation for herbalism because it really taught us to have direct relations with the plants and to know that we could like speak to them and learn directly from them. And it was also a really empowering practice because we learned to trust our intuition. Like I remember the first couple of months that we met, every single person who would share would say, "I don't know if this is just my imagination, but I learned this and this and this." And after so many times of having that imagination confirmed, or like as our teacher, Marisha Miranowska would say, the plants will work with your subconscious to deliver messages that you can understand. So anyway, I learned how to have these relationships with the plants, and all of the plants that I work with in my blends are plants that I have a relationship with that have helped me on my journey. And it's really cool because I feel like for almost all of my blends, it did not take very long at all to formulate. Like I just understood what wanted to happen, what wanted to come through me. And I could see the difference when, for example, I did a collaboration blend with Milk Moon Herbs, a postpartum ghee, and she had a few specific herbs that she wanted to work with. And it was so hard for me to formulate it. It took me forever because I didn't have super intimate relations with those herbs. Yeah.
It sounds like such an amazing herbalism program, and it resembles so closely how I make our flower essences here. It's not like I have something that pops up on my calendar that says flower essence day. It's that I walk out in our flower fields and just kind of like feel compelled to make a formulation, usually for myself, um, because it's what I need. And then if I need it, there's probably at least one other person out there who needs something similar. But I remember
Yeah.
the first time I ever made a formulation, not trusting myself and sitting with the flowers and just letting them talk to me. And I wrote a bunch of stuff down. And then I asked my ranch manager, who's definitely a skeptic, to do the same thing. And I didn't tell her any of the things that I had written down or what I was trying to do with my formulation or anything. And her list and my list, they were so simpatico. It was wild. It freaked her out. Like she was a little concerned. It was not what she expected. She did not think that she would have some big downloads by sitting next to these flowers, but to have that kind of direct experience, I think you said that phrase, yeah, it's so powerful. And then to be on the other side where as a consumer, I'm taking in something that came from that direct experience instead of something that's more commercialized. Not that there's never a place for that, but I do think that there's really something powerful about small batch when it comes to like herbs or flowers or even the fats in the ghee, because there's just more of that energy that's transferred.
Yeah. And there's also like this synergy, especially when you're making a blends, or even if you have like your energetic imprint on the flower essence, there's like some kind of synergy that happens where the whole is so much more than the sum of its parts. And there's like each element that's contained therein like elevates the whole thing
It's
and
so
elevates the
true.
next one. Yeah.
How do you source your butter? You clarify it, right? Or do you buy it clarified?
I clarify it. I source it. So I source it from Sierra Nevada Cheese Company, which is very, very local to me. I'm in the Sierra Nevada foothills, and they partner with all local family run dairies that are committed to like pasture raised practices as definitely bare minimum kind of practice. And yeah, I was thinking about this because it's like we as humans are trying to come back to like a more natural way of living, right? In order to do that, like the whole web of which we're a part also needs to come back to some degree, or would benefit from coming back into a more natural way of living. So like the
Mm.
cows being on pasture, having direct exposure to the sun, eating grass, breathing fresh air. So that's so important in terms of the animal's quality of life. But it also has a lot of benefits for us as consumers, right? Like you were talking about in bulk and eating dairy so that you can receive the energy of the sun, right? Like we can eat vitamin D from pasture raised animals. We can't receive vitamin D actually directly from the sun. like the sun catalyzes a process where of synthesis in our body which actually depends on cholesterol. It depends on fat to synthesize vitamin D. So we can eat it or we can synthesize it through the fats in our body interacting with the sun.
I've never heard it explained that way. And it shows just how like clinical we've become and how, or I'll speak for myself, how clinical my own understanding even has become and how that can lead to like completely losing the plot. Because again, in this like zero fat phobic kind of society, which we're desperately trying to pull ourselves out of with mixed results, like I think for a lot of people listening, the idea that you need to have these like good fats on board and you can't just go out into the sun and have it happen without these other processes. It's, we've just become so, now everything's about taking a single vitamin, right? Going to your local drugstore and buying a vitamin A or a vitamin B or a vitamin C, and how far from the truth that really is. Like, sure, if you're in a tight spot and you're working on a protocol with a nutritionist or whatever, that's not who I'm talking to. I'm talking to someone who is just like, why would I need to eat ghee or liver or, oranges or whatever, because I can just go pick up a pill. We've just completely lost the kind of magical cycle that's connecting all of these things and making this well-oiled machine that is the human body hum. And I just love the way that you shared that, because it is so simple.
I love that you said magical cycle. And like, I feel like I just see this over and over and over and over again, where if you just like follow a traditional practice, there's so much wisdom in that. And science continues to like catch up to that and confirm what humans have been doing for so long, And so I know there's like a little pushback on just because our ancestors did that doesn't mean that it was necessarily the right or best way. But I feel like a lot of the time, things that our ancestors were doing, even like, preserving butter, which had a real, like a real life need, but it's still something valuable today that has a lot of benefits for us, like ghee does have a lot of benefits. So does butter, but ghee also is able to land better in the bodies of more people because a lot of people are lactose intolerant or sensitive to dairy. And it seems like, I don't eat any other dairy except for ghee right now, but
Yeah, I have a friend who is going through, when I was really sick, I'll speak for myself, I couldn't tolerate any dairy. And ghee was one of the first things that I had the courage to try because I had read that it was lactose free. Does it still have casein?
It's also largely removed. It's not like fully lactose free, but casein, whey, lactose are largely removed.
Right. And those are the things that people who are reactive towards dairy usually react to. Is that right?
Yeah. So for most people who are sensitive to dairy, ghee is a really good option.
Yes. And then have you had the experience or have you heard of people like this is what happened to me was as I ate more ghee, then I could go for like Parmesan or something like very aged and also low in some of the allergens, and then go to like a cheddar that was also aged, and then I could kind of work my way into more dairy, and now I can drink milk and I don't have that kind of reactivity. But I just thank you. Yeah. It's funny, it feels like a different reality. It was so many years ago now, but like some days I can't even remember. And it's funny how in my brain I was like allergic, but then through these like magical foods and sourcing properly in the intentionality, like, is ghee considered to be gut healing? Is that like what's left? Just the pure fat? is
just the pure fat, just pure oil, basically. And it is considered to be gut healing in a lot of different traditions. My friend, who's also a functional nutritionist, Miriam Jacobson, she really talks about how food sensitivities are mostly reversible. Um, and it's really about giving the body a break from things that cause inflammation and cause like an immune response, basically. And that we can actually, by healing the gut and by doing, giving a break and healing the gut and doing some other stuff, we can reverse these sensitivities and eventually work our way up. And I've also heard of people like microdosing dairy after a period of abstaining from it in order to kind of build that tolerance back up and introduce it gently so that the body like knows what to do with, remembers what to do with it again.
I had to cut out dairy, gluten, nuts, sugar, like any and all preservatives. Like I feel like I could taste it if there was guar gum in something.
Wow.
Like, and I just felt horrible. It was also around the same period in my life that I was first getting sober. So it was kind of like everything was coming to a head. And there was a lot of like lingering self-hatred and other things that was causing inflammation. Like it was like almost like a rage inside of me. It was incredibly uncomfortable. I was covered in eczema head to toe. I was really like holding a lot of extra fluid. I was just, it was my temper and my mood, like everything was just, it was not cute. And I had to cut out all these things and drink a ton of broth and be really aware. I'd always been aware of pesticides and herbicides because I work in agriculture and I don't want to wear a gas mask to work, which many of us do. By the way, when you're buying a conventionally grown commodity, there's someone out there wearing a gas mask to do that, which is horrifying to think about. But when I started really paying attention to sort of these man-made additions to the actual food itself, that's when so much of the healing began to happen. And it did take months and months and months and months, but I could slowly start to add things in again. And it was so different to have a handful of soaked almonds or roasted almonds than like a glass of almond milk with 70 million almonds in it. Like, and I just, when I was getting back to the more pure ancestral angle, it wasn't always fancy or, romantic or attached to some culinary history. Sometimes it was just like lentils and broth, but it was just about the simplicity, really. And that opened this
Exactly.
whole gateway.
Yeah. It's exactly what I was thinking about, like simplicity, simplifying for a time. And also it sounds like you were resensitizing your body, right? Like I think alcohol has like a dulling and like numbing effect, and you were resensitizing, opening up all your senses to really perceive everything more fully.
Yeah. And I also had an opioid addiction, and they just destroy your digestive system. And like, which I didn't care about at the time, of course. It like paled in comparison to my other more important needs. But once I was able to get off of that horrible, hellish roller coaster, then you're exactly right. It was like coming back online, which sometimes is terrifying. Like, which kind of brings back to the whole fat thing, like being able to feel secure and at home and held and like stable. It was not a sensation that I was used to. And to learn that I could like feed that to myself and give that to myself. I don't want to make it sound like it was, a few snacks and I got there. Like it's been a journey, but it was so radically different from where I was, which was a place of just stagnation and disassociation and then, oh my gosh, I have feelings now. And oh my gosh, they're crazy and overwhelming. And maybe I wish I didn't have them. Oh, wow, I can actually stabilize them. I can work with them. I can like soften the roller coastery nature of it all. And anyway, it was a bit of a
Yeah.
tangent, but it all does come back to lifestyle and food so much.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your candidness in sharing about that. And I'm sure that that's so inspiring for your listeners. And I also just want to say, like, I know we both come from an urban background. And so it's been a really steep learning curve. And I remember when I first moved out to like a rural area almost 10 years ago, I had like a 6 month mental breakdown basically because it was like so quiet and I wasn't distracted by a billion things and I could like hear and see and feel everything suddenly, and it's quite intense. It's really intense. I just want to honor that process for anyone going through it in on any kind of level that we've touched on. It's real and it's an adjustment process to like come back home to ourselves.
Yes, I thank you for saying that. I have a very romantic life in a lot of ways, but that's because I choose to romanticize it when it's like 3 feet of snow on the ground and it's Christmas Eve and I want to be at home and I'm shoveling a bunch of pathways and it's cold. And, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, but part of the journey for me has been seeing the challenge as beautiful in its own right and knowing that it will be there and there doesn't have to be a huge drama attached to it. Like there will be times where we're moving right now. I have really bad ADHD. Some days I'm like walking around our new house. I have no idea where anything is. And it's like, I'm almost in a fugue state. Like, who is this person? Is there any reasonable cognitive function happening? Because there's just, and if I can laugh at it and realize like this is a chapter, this is a moment, then it makes it. But for people who are like, oh, my life would be so much better if I just lived in the sticks, maybe I think it probably would, but there's going to be more to it than like every day is a meditation because there's like a quietness and a babbling brook. It's not, that has not been my experience.
Yeah, no, same. Like, I wouldn't trade it at all. And I feel like it's also one of the factors that really contributes to this like baseline being able to function because I'm from LA. Like when I even just right after I moved up here, I would go down to visit my family and the second I would come into LA, I would start having a panic attack and I couldn't understand. I was like, I literally grew up here my entire life. Why am I having a panic attack, a full-blown panic attack? And it's like, again, when our body starts to feel safety and like some sense of nervous system regulation, we're a lot more sensitive to things that weren't able to like permeate our shells before, or they did and we just thought it was normal. We didn't realize that another way is possible.
Yeah. And there's that cliche, like you have to feel it to heal it. And that has been my experience. If there's something you really don't want to be addressing, you can't just move to the country and hope that it will go away. It will probably actually bubble to the surface and get worse before it gets better. But for me, the juice has been worth the squeeze. And just like even like you described, having that real experience with yourself to be like, oh, that's what was going on under there. Because for me, I just really didn't know what was going on under the hood and I didn't want to know. And even
Yeah.
finding out what I was really feeling seemed scary. And I had to be gentle with myself. It took years. Some stuff was like, oh, wow, that's what's been bothering me since I was 6. That's it. And I'm in my mid 30s and now I know.
I love that. I mean, life is just a process of discovery, right?
Mm. Which, speaking of, I kind of wanted to pivot a little bit into your experience as a solopreneur in this rural area. Off mic, we talked a little bit about the brief hiatus of Belly of the Sun and now your journey with the commercial kitchen and where you want to go. Can you share a little bit about that valley and where you're with it right now?
I was really lucky that Belly of the Sun had a really good reception right away. And so that gave me a lot of momentum. I was like, okay, like this is awesome. People are loving it. Oh, I am not making any money. This is completely unsustainable. um, and I think that this is definitely part of a larger conversation, right? About like pricing for food. Because I'll see like amazing herb infused tallow body butters, which are a pretty similar process of creation as ghee. And they'll be like $60 for a 4-ounce jar. And I charge at most $50 for a 12-ounce jar. And I'm working with like really amazing herbal and mushroom extracts and really potent ingredients that are really, really costly. And so it's really been a journey to figure out how to try somehow to make these creations somewhat accessible, but also sustainable from a production perspective. And it's really been a long process of figuring out new equipment. And I just moved into this new kitchen. I've been always using a commercial kitchen, but this is an industrial scale commercial kitchen. So it has like just the capacity to really help me scale up. And this probably sounds really impressive, but I was making the smallest, tiniest batches ever. Like it was hilarious what you would see from a 12-hour shift, you know? Just these few little jars. So right now I'm able to produce double. And I'm trying to not raise my prices much, if at all. But this has been like a really important move in terms of now being able to get bulk jars delivered. So they're half the price, and bulk, like storage space for bulk herbs, and also just a higher production capacity. But yeah, I think you probably have a lot to say about just the value that we place on food and how much we're willing to spend on it.
Thank you for sharing kind of a little bit behind the curtain, because I do think when people see premium food products, a lot of people are going to compare it to the commodity on the shelf without understanding some of the radical differences. Like most people don't understand that labor laws are different for people who work in agriculture. And so, your 40-hour-a-week employee at the Amazon warehouse may get overtime, whereas somebody working in a strawberry field won't earn overtime. They could work, 60 hours a week and not earn overtime. So there's so much that goes into why food is cheap. And I think if the average person who's shopping at Belly of the Sun knew, and maybe they knew like how heinous some parts of agriculture are, so that all of us can have cheap food. Like my first boss in high school, rest his soul, he was such an angel, but he would always say, somebody pays for that. And like we worked at a bagel shop and there was always hijinks, or like people would be like sneaking bagels on the side and he'd be like, somebody pays for that. Well, when you have a really inexpensive jar of ghee on the shelf of your grocery store, like somebody paid for that. It's probably the animal or the low wage worker or the undocumented person who's not receiving any kind of protection under labor laws that is taking the brunt so that that price can be suppressed, or it can be like part of an old USDA program that's incentivizing really heinous food quality standards or production methods, because that's what the system has been built around. And if that person were to like think about that and then think about Sheerlie and these cows out grazing in the sun, you know, and they were like, it's not buying you a Maserati. Your markup is not going towards your fourth vacation rental. It's really just enough to produce the good. And I believe that probably your market wants you to just produce that good and would be willing to pay more if the alternative was to not have access to it at all.
Thank you. I so appreciate all of your wisdom and passion on this topic. And like, I would love to just hear you go on, because the work that you do is so important. And these are really important conversations. Like, Belly of the Sun has not supported me. I think I'm going into my 4th year now. And I have other jobs that I do to actually support Belly of the Sun. And so I'm actually at this point right now where I said, I'm giving it 1 more year in my new kitchen with this new setup to see if I can make it sustainable. And I am so blessed to have amazing customers who I've shared about these struggles, you know, trying to figure out a way to keep moving forward and make it happen. And I've had customers reach out to me and tell me, like, not friends of mine, not people I know, tell me like, just charge more. We'll pay whatever it is. But I think it's really hard. I mean, I think there's like it's a bigger conversation about how we view money and self-worth and all this stuff, but also like, food is essential. We want it to be accessible. We want people to have access to these healing, nourishing foods. And the odds are kind of stacked against us with the way that the food industry is structured right now, with the way that very few amoral companies control the majority of our food systems. It's really, really a small little revolution that each of us are doing to do our part to make the change happen. And I also think about this too, like, something new, even though what we're both doing is something old, you know, but it's new in terms of how things are done and have been done for a while. It's more expensive whenever there's like a new invention or a new way of doing things. It's more expensive for a time until demand catches up with supply and things kind of maybe can harmonize, hopefully. And so I hope, like so many things that we've discussed, that this is just a temporary period of time where we are creating the new systems and the new pathways, and we are supporting one another into like normalizing a different way of being.
You bring up so many good points. It is hard in food because people do need to eat. And I think sometimes when people get into agriculture, or in your case, this kind of healing medicinal food, it's because you want to help. And yet that desire to help cannot make you the person whose shoulders like everyone else's health rests upon. And so there's I go back and forth in this personally, because there's an aspect of rising tides raise all boats. And what if every other small scale pastured livestock operation could benefit from everyone raising their prices together for a higher quality of life and just dignity? I mean, again, we're not talking about insane corporate buybacks. Like, that's not where these extra dollars are going. But at the same time, like, we see the people on the other end who just want to feed their families. And I think it comes back to, it's part of why I started this podcast, like deeper conversations and understanding the choices that we're making, and just incrementally trying to make better choices as consumers. Like, I know a ton about food, but I had my sister on the podcast maybe a year ago talking about clothing and fiber because that's her world. And, where can I be more intentional in that sphere of my life? Or like building materials. There's so much construction going on where I live. Everybody's building something. And like, how can we take this same conundrum that we have in the food world, and like, I'm sure there's an analog in the building world where we can just be a little bit more educated, and maybe if everything costs more to do it right, maybe we just don't need as much. I mean, and perhaps that's oversimplified or Pollyanna, but I don't think that the answer is driving the belly of the sons out of business because it's premium. I think like the benefits of being nourished, like we mentioned earlier, all the clarity and the joy and the creativity and the just like feelings of safety, it's worth it, and it's worth educating people about.
I love that so much. And I do think that we do need, as a collective society, we do need a lot less than most of us are working with. And I think when we like zoom out and look at like the whole web of life would benefit from us simplifying and being really intentional with what we do, build, create, consume. I don't know. I really love clothing. I really love clothing, and I really love like beautiful plant dyed pieces that are intentionally crafted. And but like, I was just really enjoying my little chore coat that I got at Goodwill for
Mm-hmm.
like $7. Because as someone with chronic health issues, I do spend all of my money on food, herbs, supplements, like, and it's been like that for a really, really long time. And I am lucky that I get to like trade. I do a lot of trading, and I think that's another huge perk of like small business life and just like small business collaborations. And I do a lot of trading, so that's how I get like some of the special extras. But I think all of us will have our own priorities and our own considerations for what we really need and what's really essential for us, and what's really essential for us to allocate more of our budgets toward. And that's like a conversation for each of us to have with ourselves. But just want to honor like any little choice that we can make that's an investment into the world that we want to see, right? Like, it doesn't have to be these huge life-changing things all at once. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but every choice that we make that just supports what we're trying to create, I think we should, honor that in ourselves and in each other.
What a beautiful sentiment. Thank you for that. I am speaking with someone soon about money on the podcast, which I cannot wait, because I think this medium that we've created as a society to standardize the exchange of goods, like, there is so much to dig into there. Why there's some of it here and not enough of it there, and why it's triggering, or why it's, exciting, or wherever you fall on that. But I just love how you kind of simplified it into whatever choice you're going to make today with your very valuable dollar and your precious, funds that you've earned and generated and brought into your field. Like, just letting it be as simple as starting where you can start and connecting with where you can connect, because I'm creating some new offerings for 2025. And something I've really been thinking about is how, when we're consuming these goods, whether it's this amazing ghee, like I'm still thinking about your kava ghee from 40 minutes ago, because like now I just want that. Or whether it's like a crazy delicious picnic roast, bone in, skin on, like all the ligaments and tissues like breaking down into your delicious slow cooker. It's raining here, so like this nourishing meal, it's so much more than just that food. Like it has the potential to be this much bigger experience of the land and the animals and the people who created it and the intention behind it. And when I allow myself to really just kind of like be in that ceremonial experience, there's cascading healing effects, as opposed to the more, oh, how much vitamin D is in this? Yes, that's valuable. We want to know that. But we also just, I think, as humans, want to connect with that bigger story.
Absolutely. And I really just honor so much the work that you do. You're so inspiring, and just like the reverence that you have for the animals and for the land and for the plants and for your team who you create all of this magic with. I mean, it is so revolutionary, and it's so important for us to be able to even envision a future, like the work that you're doing right now helps us envision a pathway forward for ourselves. Because I know that, if you're really paying attention, there's a lot of doom and gloom everywhere. And so I just think that seeing the solutions, and there are so many different solutions in so many different fields, right? But seeing people like pioneering those solutions when it's really not the norm and it's really not supported in so many ways really gives us hope that another way is possible, that it's being created, that people like you are going to be able to bring in more urban people in the future who are going to learn from you. How do we do this?
Mm-hmm.
How do we do this? How do we grow food? How do we nourish ourselves?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I
Thank
just
you.
feel
I mean, seriously, thank you. And I feel the same way because about what you're doing, because it can seem, I'm sure you've had the thought, like, why would I make another thing in a world full of stuff? Or like, there's so much noise, or there's these people over here who are counterfeiting herbs from Lord knows where and, misrepresenting them in the marketplace, or whatever the kind of negative, this is the world we live in dribble. Maybe that's not how it shows up in your head, but these thoughts often cross my mind. And to
yeah.
be able to say, I'm going to turn down the volume on that and just do the work that I'm here to do, and trust that as I grow as a woman and an entrepreneur and a team leader and a mother, that the message will come through and it will move through me, and it will make whatever small change or large change or whatever change it's supposed to make. And I like applaud you for not giving up when it was a moment of holy shit, I'm not paying myself. I'm not, like, how could I ever charge
Years.
what it's worth? Like, I know I've had similar moments just like that. And I know the kind of courage that's required to dust off your knees and get up off the floor and try again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. It's been a really hard year and a half trying to figure out this scale up. And even I keep saying okay, it's for sure happening. And then another obstacle came up, and it's just been literally relentless to the point that I've just really been sitting in inquiry, am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to keep pushing, this energy of pushing against? Um, or is this a sign that it's not really meant to be, and that I should move towards something that is easier and has a greater sense of flow and a path of least resistance? And I've been in that question for so long, but I did start production, and it feels really, really good. So, yeah, it feels really good to create and to be problem solving and moving forward. I feel I feel nourished by it, even though it's it's really hard, but I actually feel really nourished by it. And that's just the sign that I need to know that I can keep trying to put one foot in front of the other.
Wow, Sheerlie, thank you so much. I could talk to you about this forever. Maybe we'll have to do another like follow up, a little solo entrepreneur venting session
Yes.
on the pod, wherever you're at in, I don't know, 6 months or something. But where can people find your ghee or pre-order it? Where can they connect with you? If I don't buy all the kava skullcap stuff first, someone else can have some, I guess.
Well, we're going to have like 10 jars this season instead of 5. So
Yeah, great. Perfect. That'll last me 6 months.
So I'm Belly of the Sun on Instagram, and my website is bellyofthesun.com. I am really committed to doing some more educational efforts and writing blog posts and sharing a bit more. So look for me online. And yeah, I love connecting with foodies everywhere.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Many blessings and good luck on the move.